I think everybody's so in terms of the effect of the language on Chinese society or the development of Chinese society. Obviously, it's a pictogram. It's essentially a pictogram rather than a phonetic, and that has several important consequences. So the first one is that the characters don't change over a very long period of time, even though the pronunciation might. So that, in effect, means that there are documents that were written about the time of Christ, which are relatively easy to understand. So it survives over very long periods of time. So, for example, with this house, or this village, there is a page in the Doomsday Book, which is a census in 1080, roughly. And if you look at that page to cover this village, it's totally unintelligible for a normal English reading person. You'd have to spend a lifetime studying that ancient language to really understand it. On the other hand, there is a poem written by a Chinese poet called Huangjingjian, exactly the same time, the same year, and you can completely understand it. I can see the waters of the Yellow River flowing. Yeah, so it survives over an enormous stretch of time, and I think that gives people a sense that their history is still alive. You've got this connection with people who were living and thinking thousands of years ago. So there's a continuity. The second thing is that it can transmit itself over very large distances. So, for example, if you wrote a instruction in the capital in Chinese 1,000 years ago, it would be intelligible to officials that were 1,000 miles away. Whereas in Europe, the language is all completely different. So it's a tool for binding together a large area, which resulted in concentration of power at the centre. And then finally, I would say that because it's almost like an art form, so that the language is a combination of meaning and beauty, and that stimulated scholarship. And through the language and learning, there was a body of scholar officials that grew up, and that could form the backbone of the bureaucracy of China and enable the central state to administer a very large region. So I think that the answer to the very basic question, which is why after the Han Dynasty, when China collapsed and disintegrated, the same thing happened in Europe after the Roman Empire. It happened about the same time, roughly the same population, roughly the same area. China recoalesced and then broke apart and recoalesced repeatedly. So the thing that's extremely interesting about China is that the core of the civilization survived so long, whereas in Europe, after the collapse of the Roman Empire, you could argue that Europe's basic problem at the moment is unification, and that's lasted for 2,000 years.